Have you ever looked at someone achieving, incredible success and found yourself thinking, wow, they must possess some truly extraordinary genius?
Or maybe the flip side, right? Where you've poured immense effort into something, feels like you're constantly fighting this uphill battle.
Yeah, exactly. And then you see others just seem to effortlessly coast to victory, almost like, I don't know, destiny itself is guiding them.
Well, today, we're going to try and peel back the layers on one of the most profound yet often invisible forces shaping our lives, randomness.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take your chosen sources and really try to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, helping you get truly well-informed.
We're here to give you those aha moments, the ones that make complex ideas not just click into place, but actually transform from these abstract concepts into genuinely useful insights you can maybe apply.
And today, our deep dive takes us into the brilliant and sometimes quite prickly mind of Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Specifically, we're looking at his incredibly thought-provoking book, Fooled by Randomness, the hidden role of chance in life and in the markets.
That's right. We'll be carefully exploring the core ideas he presents, basically from the introduction right through chapter 14.
And this isn't just, a book review. It's really meant to be an intense, hopefully fascinating exploration of how our brains seem fundamentally wired to misunderstand chance.
Yeah, and how that profound misunderstanding impacts pretty much every facet of our existence. Our careers, big financial decisions, even our deepest emotional well-being. It's everywhere.
Taleb himself, interestingly, describes this work not as some dry scientific treatise, but more like a deeply personal essay.
He does. He says it was written for pleasure, reflecting his own struggles and observations connected to the practice of risk-taking. So yeah, brace yourself. It's often surprising, intensely personal, and frequently counterintuitive.
It's a journey into the real nature of luck versus genuine skill. A powerful invitation, really, for all of us to rethink how we see success, failure, and, competence in this inherently unpredictable world we live in.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. And interestingly, Taleb doesn't start with modern finance. He goes way back to ancient Greece.
Right, with Solon and Croesus. It's a fantastic setup.
Tell us about that. He sets the stage with this legendary encounter between Solon, the revered Athenian legislator, and Croesus. Croesus was the king of Lydia, fabulously wealthy.
Known far and wide as the richest man of his time. And Croesus, basking in his immense prosperity, proudly asks Solon if he knew of any man happier than himself.
And Solon, being the sage he was, didn't immediately say, "You, Croesus."
No, not at all. He responded by listing these heroic figures who had lived noble lives and died honorably, which naturally irked Croesus.
So Croesus pushes him, insisting, "Well, am I not the happiest man?"
And that's when Solon delivers this profound, really timeless warning. It's a quote worth remembering.
What did he say?
Solon replied, and I'm quoting Taleb, quoting the story here, "The uncertain future has yet to come, and him only to whom the divinity has guaranteed continued happiness until the end we may call happy."
Wow. That's not just poetic, is it? It's packed with crucial, often overlooked insights about randomness.
Exactly. Solon instinctively understood that anything gained through the fickle hand of luck can just as easily, and often rapidly, be taken away by that same luck.
Whereas things achieved with less help from luck are more robust, more resistant to randomness.
Precisely. They're more resistant to the sudden whims of fortune. What's truly remarkable is how this ancient tale just intuitively grasps concepts that modern science still struggles to formalize sometimes.
Like what concepts are we talking about?
Well, Solon's insight touches upon what philosophers call the problem of induction, the idea that no matter how many times you observe something, like, say, white swans.
It doesn't prove that all swans are white.
Right. Taleb often calls this the black swan problem, that rare, impactful, unpredictable event that just renders all your past observations irrelevant. But Solon's wisdom also hints at something else, something really central to Taleb's thinking. The skewness issue.
Skewness. Okay, explain that. Why is that so crucial?
It's absolutely critical for understanding real-world risk, especially in finance, but really in life too. It's about the asymmetry in outcomes, how things aren't always balanced.
Asymmetry, like not evenly distributed.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Imagine two hypothetical businesses. Business A makes a small profit, say $100 99 times out of 100, but that one time it fails, it suffers a catastrophic loss of like $10,000.
Okay, sounds pretty good most of the time.
Right. Now, business B loses a small amount 99 times out of 100, but that one time it wins, it gains $10,000.
That sounds much riskier up front.
Intuitively, yes. Most people, just looking at the frequency, would prefer business A. They think, great, I'll be profitable 99% of the time.
But that one loss.
Exactly. The skewness means that one single massive loss in business A completely wipes out hundreds of those small gains. It's not just about how often you win or lose. It's the magnitude of the payoff when you do.
And our brains are just bad at getting that.
Terrible. Especially when the failure is rare but catastrophic. We focus on the frequency, not the potential impact.
So for you, the listener, think about this. How often do we judge people and, let's be honest, ourselves based purely on current visible results?
We see someone at the absolute pinnacle of success, maybe in business or art or whatever, and we immediately attribute it to their unparalleled genius or foresight.
Without pausing to consider the countless alternative histories that could have unfolded, the paths not taken.
Exactly. What if that super successful person simply happened to avoid the one rare event that would have brought them crashing down? Not through skill, maybe, but just through sheer dumb luck.
That's a powerful thought. And it's precisely what Taleb illustrates with his case studies, right? Nero Tulip versus John, the high-yield trader.
Yes, they're brilliant examples. These two characters represent diametrically opposed approaches to life and risk, particularly in the volatile world of financial markets.
They really show how deeply intertwined luck and skill are, and, maybe more importantly, how easily we can confuse the two.
Totally. Let's dive into them.
Okay, let's start with Nero Tulip. I find him a really fascinating character. He's presented as this highly educated guy, degrees in ancient literature, mathematics, philosophy.
Right, not your typical finance bro stereotype. He found academia too rigid, too boring maybe, and he was allergic to all that corporate jargon.
Yeah, things like game plan or bottom line. Taleb says he actively shunned the limelight, rejected the whole hot trader persona. His temperament just wasn't built for that particular dance.
And his trading style reflected that, didn't it? It was incredibly conservative, especially compared to the high-stakes strategies you often see.
How so? What did he actually do?
Well, Nero would apparently get out of trades very quickly the moment they hit a predetermined, quite small loss. He absolutely refused to sell naked options.
Which can expose you to potentially unlimited losses, right?
Exactly. Huge downside risk. And he always capped his exposure, never risking more than, say, $1 million, though Taleb notes he'd adjust that a bit based on his profits for the year.
So this approach meant he wasn't going to make that masters of the universe kind of money, the stuff that grabs headlines.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
But crucially, it virtually guaranteed his professional survival year after year. Longevity was the game.
And his results show that. A steady nest egg, income ranging from, $300K to $2.5 million, averaging $500,000 a year saved after PAX. That's impressive consistency.
Yeah, especially in a field known for its high burnout rate. He calmly watched countless other traders blowing up, losing way more than they ever expected, often getting completely wiped out, thrown out of the business.
Well, he just kept going, resistant to randomness by design.
Taleb even calls him the dentist of the profession.
The dentist?
Yeah.
What?
Well, think about it. A dentist typically has a stable, long-term, relatively predictable income. It's not flashy like a rock star or maybe a high-flying speculator, but it's reliable. Nero's approach was like that, aiming for the reliability of the dentist, not the volatile, often short-lived highs of the rock musician.
That's a great analogy. It forces you to consider the average outcome in a profession, not just the super visible, often very lucky successes we always hear about.
Exactly. Most musicians aren't rock stars, most writers aren't bestsellers, and most traders don't become billionaires. Nero understood that the real goal wasn't just to get rich quick, but to stay in the game, to survive.
Okay, now let's pivot completely. Contrast Nero with John, the high-yield trader. Taleb calls him the lucky fool.
Yeah, and John's strategy was, in Taleb's wonderful phrase, like taking a nap on a railway track.
Huh. Explain that. What was he doing?
He was basically borrowing money at low interest rates and investing in a higher-yielding, supposedly riskier bonds. And for a while, it worked beautifully. He made small, steady gains month after month.
Which sounds good, but the railway track analogy suggests danger.
Big danger. That steady stream of small wins unfortunately gave him this incredibly false, dangerous sense of security. He amassed huge positions, like over $3 billion in trades. His income grew. His bonus one year was a staggering $10 million.
He must have thought he was a genius.
Absolutely. He believed his own hype. But then, as Taleb warns, inevitably, The music stopped.
The train arrived.
The train arrived. A single massive loss event didn't just wipe out all his previous cumulative performance. It cost his employer something like $600 million in just a few days. Gone.
And the key here is the illusion of skill, right? Why did he seem so successful for so long?
That's critical. His perceived success wasn't necessarily down to brilliant economic insight. It was largely because other traders started copying him. Their buying pushed prices up, creating this self-fulfilling momentum.
So it wasn't really fundamental value?
Not according to Taleb. John catastrophically overestimated the accuracy of his beliefs. And crucially, unlike Nero, he lacked a clear, precise game plan for what to do when losses inevitably hit.
He was probably in denial.
Deep denial. Clinging to some abstract theoretical value in his positions instead of facing the harsh reality of the market prices. His whole strategy was built on the implicit assumption that the good times, that clear railway track, would last forever.
And Taleb brings in this fascinating biological element here too, the serotonin effect.
Yeah, this is really insidious. Success, even if it's purely down to random chance, can literally trigger an increase in serotonin levels in our brains.
And that affects behavior.
Profoundly.
Yeah.
It often manifests externally, a more upright posture, more confident, assertive speech, this general aura of leadership ability. People literally walk taller.
Creating this powerful, self-reinforcing delusion.
Exactly. The lucky fools genuinely start to believe they deserve their success, that they're on a roll, and that their confident demeanor is just a natural reflection of their competence.
And others pick up on that confidence.
They do, which reinforces the cycle. Confidence breeds confidence until randomness, as Taleb puts it, rears its head and delivers that brutal kick. Then the cycle reverses, often just as quickly.
So this raises a really tough question for us, doesn't it? How can we possibly distinguish between genuine, repeatable skill and just that temporary, intoxicating boost of serotonin?
It's incredibly difficult because we are just wired, probably deeply evolved, to associate that outward confidence, that physical assertiveness, with underlying competence.
Like that Chicago cab driver Taleb mentions, who could supposedly tell if traders were doing well just by their puffed-up walk.
Exactly. It's a primal signal. And the scary part is it fools not only us as observers, but often the successful individuals themselves, perpetuating the whole illusion.
Okay, so these stories, Nero and John, they lead us into a deeper, maybe more philosophical area, these unseen worlds, the alternative histories, and our own kind of inherent probability blindness.
Yeah, Taleb uses this stark thought experiment involving Russian roulette.
Right. Imagine someone offers you $10 million to play Russian roulette. One bullet, 6 chambers.
5 outcomes are immense enrichment, life-changing money. One outcome is, well, death.
If you play and survive, you win. You'd probably be celebrated, admired, interviewed, seen as bold, maybe even smart.
But here's the kicker. In reality, we only ever see the one history that plays out, the one where the person survives and becomes a hero.
We don't see the 5 ghosts standing beside them.
Exactly. The winner is hailed as a role model, without anyone truly comprehending or even acknowledging the 5 other equally possible outcomes where they would have just been dead. A footnote.
And Taleb's point is that real life is even trickier than that.
Far more vicious, he says. Instead of just 6 chambers, imagine hundreds, maybe thousands. This leads to a numbing false sense of security because the bad outcome is so rare.
Until the black swan, that rare, devastating, unpredictable event, finally hits.
And the barrel of reality, with all its hidden probabilities, is rarely visible to us, which makes it terrifyingly easy to unwittingly play these high-stakes games with consequences we just cannot fathom.
And the media often makes this worse, doesn't it? Our perception gets skewed.
Definitely. Taleb gives that great example about insurance policies.
Yeah.
People would willingly pay more for insurance specifically against death from terrorism
Than they would for a general insurance policy against death from any cause, which includes terrorism.
Exactly. It makes no logical sense, but it shows our brain's powerful bias towards vivid, emotionally charged, specific risks, even if they're statistically far less likely than the boring, aggregate, abstract risk.
He also talks about journalistic sophistry. What does he mean by that?
He cites this interview between the commentator George Will and Professor Robert Shiller, the economist who actually called the dot-com bubble.
Okay.
Will basically dismissed Shiller's warnings about an overpriced market, simply because the crash hadn't happened yet. He implied Shiller was wrong because his timing wasn't immediate.
Ugh, confusing forecast with prophecy.
Precisely. It shows how media often prioritizes sounding smart and decisive in the moment over being genuinely right in the long run. A real scientist, like Schiller, understands that probability deals with likelihoods, not precise timings.
This leads to another painful lesson Taleb calls the stove is hot.
Yeah, the idea that despite countless historical examples of financial blow-ups, market crashes, bubbles bursting, people consistently fail to learn from other people's mistakes.
We have to touch the stove ourselves?
Pretty much. We seem fundamentally wired to learn primarily from our own direct, painful experiences. This denigration of history, as Taleb calls it, means that these predictable patterns of boom and bust get ignored again and again.
Because everyone thinks this time is different, or my situation is different.
Exactly. Especially when things are going well. Optimism overrides historical caution.
And there's also hindsight bias, muddying the waters, the I knew it all along effect.
Oh, massively. Once an event has happened, it always seems so much more predictable, more deterministic than it actually was while it was unfolding.
Our minds create a neat story looking backward.
They do. Taleb suggests our minds are wired this way not necessarily to understand the world accurately, but more as a survival mechanism to help us get out of trouble rapidly and have progeny. It helps us make quick sense of the past, but it makes us terrible learners from history's uncertainties.
Okay, this leads to a concept that sounds a bit academic, but you said it's crucial. Ergodicity.
Yes, ergodicity. It's a powerful idea. Imagine someone who consistently takes reckless shortcuts. Maybe they always speed, ignore safety rules, whatever.
Okay, they might get away with it for a while.
They might get lucky, yeah. They might win by saving time or avoiding immediate hassle. But ergodicity argues that over a long enough timeline, over potentially infinite exposures to that risk,
the negative consequences will catch up.
They must catch up, statistically speaking. The bad trades, or in everyday life, the bad decisions, the poor processes, eventually reveal their true cost. You might get lucky once, or 10 times, but you can't get lucky forever if the underlying process is flawed.
So long-term survival isn't about short-term luck. It's about strategies that can withstand repeated exposure to randomness.
Exactly. It's about the process, not just the outcome of a single event. Conversely, someone using genuine skill and robust, maybe even antifragile strategies.
Even if they have bad luck sometimes.
Right. Even if they hit short-term setbacks, over the long run, their true ability, their sound process, is likely to win out. It fundamentally shifts our focus from just looking at immediate visible results to thinking about enduring, robust processes.
Let's dig into this idea of noise versus information. Taleb argues our brains really struggle to tell them apart.
He uses a fantastic, very relatable example. A dentist looking at his investment portfolio.
Okay.
Imagine the dentist investment manager has a stellar track record, say, a 93% annual success rate. Sounds amazing, right?
Absolutely. Sign me up.
But then Taleb asks, what if that same portfolio, the one generating that great annual return, was checked minute by minute?
Oh boy, I sense a catch.
Big catch. Suddenly, the success rate, meaning how often it shows a positive tick in any given minute, plummets to just 50.02%, basically a coin flip.
Why? Is the manager suddenly bad minute by minute?
No, not at all. It's because over such tiny time increments, what you're mostly seeing is random variability, the market's jitteriness, what Taleb calls noise. You're not seeing the true underlying return, the signal.
And our emotions can't handle that constant jitter.
Not well. The dentist, watching his screen minute by minute, would feel a constant pang of anxiety with every tiny dip and only fleeting pleasure with every tiny gain. And Taleb points out that research suggests the pain of loss is felt about 2.5 times more strongly than the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
So watching constantly would lead to a huge emotional deficit, feeling miserable even if the long-term result is great.
Precisely. He'd burn out, he'd feel stressed, and probably make bad reactive decisions based on noise, not signal.
Whereas if he only looked less often.
Right. If you looked at monthly statements, maybe 67% would be positive, fewer emotional hits. And if he only looked at yearly statements over, say, 20 years, he'd experience maybe 19 pleasant surprises for every single unpleasant one.
Wow. So the frequency of checking drastically changes the emotional experience of the exact same underlying reality.
Totally. And our emotional response can completely mislead us about the actual performance.
This seems like where Taleb's Monte Carlo engine comes in handy. What is that exactly?
It's basically a mathematical technique originally used in things like developing the atomic bomb, believe it or not. It lets you simulate thousands, even millions of artificial histories or alternative sample paths.
So you can see how things might have played out under randomness.
Exactly. Taleb argues it's more than just computation. It's a fundamental way of thinking. It helps you understand the range of possibilities, grasp uncertainty, and crucially, distinguish that meaningful signal from the random noise.
Did he use it in his own work?
Extensively. He modeled imaginary fast-mutating animals called zorglubs under climate change, different types of traders, the idiotic bull, the impetuous bear, the cautious type.
And what did these simulations show?
Consistently, the only strategies that reliably led to long-term survival were those used by what he calls option buyers.
People buying actual options.
Not necessarily literally buying financial options, although that's part of it. It's more about strategies that effectively buy insurance against catastrophic blowups. They prioritize protecting the downside.
So they might underperform in steady markets but survive the crashes?
Exactly. Their strategies gave them remarkable staying power. And crucially, Taleb emphasizes they could sleep at night, free from anxiety, knowing a single bad day wouldn't obliterate them. They weren't trying to predict the future. They were building strategies robust enough to survive it, whatever it might bring.
That makes sense. This focus on noise leads us into Chapter 4, where Taleb looks at randomness, what he calls nonsense, and the scientific mind. He challenges us to think about business speak.
Oh, yeah. Those phrases we hear all the time, our assets are our people, we're focused on creating shareholder value. He asks how much of this is just, well, dressed up nonsense.
How does he suggest we test it?
He proposes a kind of reverse Turing test.
Yeah.
If you can randomly generate a plausible-sounding CEO speech using common corporate buzzwords and cliches, and nobody can tell it's randomly generated,
then it's probably meaningless noise.
Pretty much. He contrasts this with genuine intellectual rigor, citing Karl Popper's fierce critique of philosophers like Hegel. Popper saw Hegelian jargon as just meaningless, pseudoscientific historicism.
Like that quote about sound being the change in the specific condition of segregation of the material part.
Exactly. Utterly opaque, devoid of real empirical content, yet revered as profound for ages. Taleb warns us, beware complexity that just masks a lack of substance.
But then, confusingly, Taleb admits he kind of enjoys randomness in art.
He does. It's a fascinating paradox. He talks about the surrealist poetry exercise called exquisite cadavers, where you randomly string words together.
And sometimes you get these bizarre but beautiful lines like, the exquisite cadavers shall drink the new wine.
Right. He argues that genuine beauty, real aesthetic pleasure, can emerge purely from chance, pleasing our senses, even if it lacks strict logical coherence.
He even connects this to holy languages in religion.
Yeah, like preserving sacred texts in Latin or classical Arabic. He suggests these dead languages were kept insulated from the rationalization of daily use, implicitly acknowledging that symbolic, aesthetic, and emotional meaning sometimes holds more power for humans than purely literal or logical interpretation.
It speaks to our dual nature, doesn't it? The rational mind grappling with the aesthetic, emotional one.
Absolutely. It's a constant tension.
Okay, let's move into what Taleb calls our innate probability blindness. This seems central. He revisits that concept of asymmetry or skewness.
Yes, and he uses the powerful personal story of the late evolutionary biologist Stephen Jay Gould and his cancer diagnosis.
What happened there?
Gould was diagnosed with a particularly deadly form of cancer and initially told the median survival time was just 8 months.
Terrifying, meaning half the people were dead within 8 months.
Exactly. Understandably horrifying. But Gould, being a scientist, dug deeper into the data. He found that while many died early, pulling the median down, those who did survive often lived considerably longer, pulling the average survival time way up.
Ah, so the distribution was skewed.
Highly skewed. This realization fundamentally shifted his perspective from despair to a sort of cautious optimism. His famous takeaway was, the median is not the message.
Because in skewed situations, the median gives a very distorted picture compared to the average.
Precisely. And Taleb hammers this point home for investing. It's not about how likely an event is like, say, the market going up 70% of the time.
It's about the magnitude of the payoff when it does happen or when it doesn't.
Exactly. Investors get paid in dollars, not probabilities. You might be right 70% of the time that the market goes up. But if those gains are tiny and the 30% of the time it goes down involves massive losses,
then focusing only on the probability of being right is foolish. You have to consider the skewness, the potential impact.
absolutely critical. Ignoring skewness is a classic way we get fooled.
This also helps explain why experts are so bad at predicting things, right?
Yes, Taleb brings in the Lucas critique from economics. Basically, if rational people detect a predictable pattern in something like the market, they'll immediately try to exploit it.
Which makes the pattern disappear.
Right. Their actions change the system. This implies that relying purely on past patterns to predict the future is often futile, especially in complex systems with thinking participants. The market is non-stationary.
Like Taleb's mischievous child changing the composition of the urn while you're trying to figure out the odds.
Exactly. Your old data becomes obsolete quickly. This ties directly into Karl Popper's idea of falsificationism.
Remind us of that again.
Popper argued that science progresses not by proving theories true, which is logically impossible. You could never see all swans to prove they're all white, but by proving theories false.
You just need one black swan to disprove all swans are white.
Precisely. Finding evidence against a hypothesis is much more logically sound than accumulating evidence for it. This asymmetry is fundamental to gaining robust knowledge under uncertainty.
And Taleb connects this to the trader Victor Niederhofer.
Yes, a tragic but illustrative story. Niederhofer was brilliant, an empiricist, a squash champion. He treated markets like a game, like squash, with defined rules, relying heavily on historical data.
His extreme empiricism.
Right. But reality, unlike squash, doesn't have neat, symmetric win-loss rules. He focused on maximizing his probability of winning small, frequent bets derived from history.
But ignored the small probability of a catastrophic loss, the black swan.
Exactly. His reliance on historical patterns, without acknowledging the possibility of events outside that history, led to spectacular blow-ups. He didn't grasp the limits of empiricism in a skewed, uncertain world.
Which brings us neatly to another major bias, the survivorship trap.
Ah, yes. Too many millionaires next door.
Explain that one. Taleb uses the example of Mark the lawyer.
Right. Mark is highly successful by any normal measure, living on Park Avenue, earning $500,000 a year. But his wife, Janet, feels he's a failure. Why?
Because she's only comparing him to their neighbors, the billionaire.
Exactly. She's looking only at the visibility winners, the extreme successes who happen to live nearby. She doesn't see the thousands of lawyers who started out with similar ambitions but failed or achieved much less. They are invisible. That's survivorship bias.
And this creates those treadmill effects.
Yes, the social treadmill. You get richer, move to a richer area, and suddenly feel poor again because your comparison group shifted. And the psychological treadmill, you get used to wealth. Your happiness baseline resets, and you're no happier than before.
Taleb also criticizes the book The Millionaire Next Door for this.
He does, for what he calls a double survivorship bias. The book only studied successful wealth accumulators, completely ignoring the vast numbers who might have tried similar frugal strategies but failed for reasons involving bad luck or other factors. It presents a biased picture of how achievable that outcome really is.
And this bias applies way beyond finance, right? Taleb says it's easier to buy and sell than fry an egg.
Meaning?
Meaning in some fields, like dentistry or piano playing, skill is reasonably verifiable. You can tell if the dentist fixes your tooth or the pianist hits the notes. But in fields dominated by randomness, like investment management,
it's incredibly hard, maybe impossible, to truly know if someone's success is skill or just luck. The outcomes are just too noisy.
He uses another Monte Carlo simulation here with 10,000 managers.
Yes, a powerful one. Imagine 10,000 managers start in a perfectly fair game, 50-50 chance of winning or losing each year. If a manager has just one bad year, they're out.
Okay. How many are left after, say, 5 years?
Only 184, less than 2% of the original group. And crucially, all of these survivors, purely by chance, will have perfect track records, 5 winning years in a row.
They look like geniuses.
They look like geniuses, but it was pure luck filtering the sample. Nobody talks about the 9,816 who failed, even though they were playing a fair game.
And Taleb's shocking point is,
even if you started with 10,000 bad managers, ones statistically likely to lose, you'd still end up with a handful of apparent winners just by chance. This makes it practically impossible, he argues, to tell if a manager is genuinely good or just lucky by looking at their track record alone, especially over shorter periods.
the size of the initial pool matters more than the skill in determining the best observed track record.
Exactly. It's deeply counterintuitive.
This connects to the birthday paradox too, doesn't it?
It does. The surprising fact that in a group of just 23 people, there's a 50% chance to share a birthday. It feels wrong, but it's true.
Why is that relevant?
It shows how easily coincidences happen in large data sets. If you don't understand this, you fall prey to data mining, finding seemingly meaningful patterns in random noise, like seeing faces in clouds or finding secret codes in Moby Dick.
Or things like the Bible Code or the Da Vinci Code, finding patterns that are just chance.
Precisely. If you look hard enough at enough data, you'll always find something that looks significant but isn't.
And related to this is the difference between absence of evidence and evidence of absence.
Yes, the dog that did not bark. A crucial distinction. Often, scientific studies that don't find a statistically significant result simply aren't published.
The file drawer problem.
Right. So a journalist might report no evidence that a drug works when the reality is just not enough evidence yet to meet a specific statistical threshold. This silence, this absence of reported evidence, biases our understanding because we don't see the full picture, including the inconclusive results.
Okay, let's tackle nonlinearity. The nonlinearity of life and the probability-blind brain. Taleb uses the sandpile effect.
A brilliant analogy. Imagine adding grains of sand one by one to a pile. For a long time, each grain just makes the pile slightly bigger, linear progression. Until you add that one final grain and boom, the whole pile collapses. A tiny input causes a massive, disproportionate outcome.
Nonlinearity, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Exactly. Our brains expect smooth, linear cause and effect. Add 1 unit of cause, get 1 unit of effect. But reality, especially in complex systems, markets, ecosystems, social trends, is full of these tipping points, these thresholds where things suddenly shift dramatically.
And we're just not wired for it.
Not really. We consistently underestimate the potential for these sudden, large shifts.
He also mentions path dependence, like the QWERTY keyboard.
Yeah, the idea that initial conditions, sometimes random ones, can get locked in and determine the future path, even if it's not the most optimal path.
QWERTY isn't the most efficient layout, but it's what we're stuck with because of early typewriter design.
Exactly. History matters. Small early events can have huge lasting consequences that defy simple linear logic. Think about an actor's fame. Maybe one lucky role sets them on a path reinforced by more attention, better scripts. It snowballs nonlinearly.
So our brains struggle with nonlinearity, and Taleb also says flat out, we are probability blind.
He does, and he demonstrates it clearly. Our emotional brain reacts totally differently to the same probability depending on how it's framed.
Like Nero's cancer diagnosis again, 28% chance of death felt terrifying, like imagining his funeral.
But 72% chance of survival felt cheerful, made him plan ski trips. Logically identical, but emotionally worlds apart.
Like saying 75% fat-free versus 25% fat for the same hamburger.
Perfect example. Framing is incredibly powerful because our probability sense is weak.
This links to Kahneman and Tversky's work on heuristics and biases.
Absolutely. Their Nobel Prize-winning work showed our brains use these mental shortcuts, these heuristics, which are fast and often useful, but lead to systematic errors or biases in judgment.
Can you quickly recap some key ones Taleb highlights?
Sure. There's anchoring, getting stuck on the first piece of information you hear. Availability, judging likelihood by how easily examples spring to mind why we fear plane crashes more than car crashes.
Even though cars are far riskier.
Right. Then representativeness. Judging based on stereotypes like the Linda problem, is Linda more likely a bank teller or a bank teller and a feminist? People wrongly pick the second because it fits the description better, ignoring basic probability.
There's also the simulation heuristic.
Yeah, mentally undoing events. Missing your flight by 2 minutes feels way worse than missing it by 2 hours because you can easily simulate making it if you're just a bit faster. And the affect heuristic. Our emotions driving our risk perception. If it feels good, we think it's less risky.
Kahneman and Tversky also talked about 2 systems of reasoning.
System 1, fast, automatic, intuitive, emotional. System 2, slow, effortful, logical, conscious. Most of the time, System 1 is running the show, and System 2 only kicks in, sometimes too late, when we really focus. Experience can train System 1, like for a chess master, but often it just leaves us astray in probabilistic situations.
And evolutionary psychology suggests this is because our brains evolved for a simpler world.
That's the argument. Our brains are made for fitness, not for truth. They're optimized for survival in a natural habitat, the savanna, small tribes where quick heuristics worked well, not for abstract statistics and complex modern probabilities.
We're using Stone Age minds in a Space Age world.
Something like that. Taleb uses the O.J. Simpson trial as a stark example of societal probability blindness, Kafka in a courtroom.
How so?
He argues the trial showed a massive failure to understand basic probability, like conditional probability, confusing the probability of A given B with the probability of B given A. Lawyers, jury, public all seemed swayed by flawed probabilistic reasoning and emotional narratives.
And this blindness extends to finance with option blindness.
Definitely. People, even regulators, often undervalue things like financial options because they focus on the most likely scenario, the option expiring worthless, rather than the expected value across all scenarios, which might include a small chance of a huge payoff.
So they prefer steady, small gains like option sellers.
Over strategies that lose small amounts often, but have rare, large payoffs, like option buyers, even if the latter is mathematically superior long-term. It's the psychological appeal of frequent small wins.
And journalists often add to the confusion noise pollution.
Yeah, Taleb argues they frequently misinterpret probabilities, confusing absence of evidence with evidence of absence, making life expectancy fallacies, focusing on noisy short-term fluctuations as if they're meaningful trends. They amplify our innate biases.
Okay, so given all this, the randomness, our biases, the noise, how on earth do we cope? Taleb moves into solutions like taming the emotional animal.
Right. He suggests using wax in my ears, like Odysseus sailing past the sirens.
He even admits his own struggles, right? His gambler's tiff.
Very candidly. Despite being a master probabilist, he found himself acting on mild superstitions. A lucky cab driver, a coffee-stained tie influencing market outcomes. It shows how deep-rooted these irrational impulses are.
He mentions Skinner's pigeon experiment, too.
Yeah, where pigeons developed weird rituals, rain dances, because food was delivered randomly. They created causal links where none existed. It highlights our innate bias to find patterns, even in randomness.
So the solution isn't just pure rationality. We can't just tame the heart.
Taleb argues it's very hard. Instead, he suggests using Odyssean guile, clever tricks to manage our irrationality, to outsmart our own emotional systems.
Like his personal trick, the Odyssean mute command.
Exactly. Watching financial news on TV with the sound off. He says the pundits look ridiculous, stripped of their confident tone. It reveals the noise for what it is, prevents emotional contagion. It's his personal wax in the ears.
That's brilliant. This idea of self-management links to skepticism as a way of life. He brings in Carneades, the Greek philosopher.
Carneades, the ultimate skeptic. He could argue powerfully for justice one day and then argue just as powerfully against it the next day.
What was his point? That truth is relative.
More that certain knowledge is unattainable. Nothing could be accepted with certainty. He advocated for judging things based on degrees of probability as a guide to action, rather than claiming absolute truth.
This relates to the right to contradict oneself, which our culture often frowns upon.
Yeah, we see changing your mind as weak or inconsistent. Think of politicians flip-flopping. But Taleb, following Popper, argues that in science and decision-making, rigidly sticking to past ideas despite new evidence is disastrous. True intellectuals like Popper or George Soros embrace falsification. They actively try to prove themselves wrong.
Seeking disconfirmation, not just confirmation.
Exactly. That's how knowledge progresses.
And the opposite leads to fiascos like the Nobel folly, long-term capital management.
The perfect cautionary tale. LTCM, founded by Nobel laureates Scholes and Merton, brilliant minds who thought they'd conquered risk with mathematical models.
Until they were hit by a 10 sigma event. Something their model said was virtually impossible.
Right, it happened. Their models, built on past data, failed catastrophically because they didn't account for true, radical uncertainty of the black swan. It revealed the limits of trying to scientifically measure risk in a complex world.
So how does this apply practically? Practical falsificationism.
Taleb observes that surviving traders, the ones like Nero, instinctively use a Popperian approach. They might use statistics to make aggressive bets when they think they have an edge.
But never for risk management.
Never rely on statistics to tell them their risk. Instead, they set predetermined stop losses. These aren't based on hoping the position comes back. They're based on a level that, if hit, would disprove their original investment thesis.
So the stop loss isn't just limiting losses, it's an admission that the idea might be wrong.
Exactly. It's accepting falsification. Unlike John, who clung to his positions hoping they'd recover, the practical falsificationist says, if X happens, my idea was wrong and I'm out. No ego involved.
This leads us to the final part, the art of dignity and stoicism. How does Taleb frame stoicism?
Not just as grin and bear it or suppressing emotion. He sees it as adopting a protocol of behavior that does not depend on the immediate circumstance. It's a way to maintain inner integrity regardless of external fortune.
He calls the illusion of victory of man against randomness.
Yes, because while you can't control outcomes, you can control your response. It's about embracing emotion, feeling shaken, feeling fear, but retaining grace and composure in your actions.
He quotes that poem to Antony. Listen while shaken by emotion, but not with the coward's imploration and complaints.
Exactly. Feel the fear, feel the pain, but act with dignity. Don't whine, don't blame.
What are some examples of this Stoic behavior?
Taleb gives powerful ones. Dressing your best on your execution day. Not playing the victim when you get a terrible diagnosis. Being courteous to your staff even when you've lost a fortune. Fundamentally, not blaming others or fate for your circumstances. Taking responsibility for your reactions.
It culminates in that powerful takeaway. The only article Lady Fortuna has no control over is your behavior.
That's the core of it. Luck dictates outcomes. But your character, your actions, your dignity, those are yours alone. Even Nero, the careful planner, eventually met his black swan, a helicopter crash. Randomness gets us all in the end. But how he lived, his dignity, was his own.
Taleb adds a few postscripts too, right? The inverse skills problem.
Yeah, this counterintuitive idea that the higher you go up the corporate ladder, often the less clear the link between compensation and actual individual contribution, because randomness plays a bigger role in outcomes at that level.
CEOs might be skilled politicians rather than skilled decision makers?
Often, yes.
Yeah.
Their success might be more about navigating the internal game than generating real external value. The link between pay and performance becomes very noisy.
And he also finds benefits of uncertainty. That seems odd.
It does, but think about it. A bit of randomness in your schedule, for instance, prevents you from over-optimizing your life to the point of fragility. It forces you to be a satisficer, aiming for good enough, rather than a maximizer, aiming for the absolute best.
And research shows satisficers are often happier.
They are. Also, a bit of unpredictability in your behavior can be a strategic advantage, a deterrent. Noise in a system can sometimes prevent overreactions and promote stability. Uncertainty isn't always bad.
And his final self-insight, his own generator for being fooled.
He concludes, we favor the visible, the embedded, the personal, the narrated, and the tangible. We scorn the abstract. This deep human bias towards concrete stories and away from abstract probabilities.
Is both our strength, giving us art and ethics.
And our weakness, making us constantly vulnerable to being fooled by randomness.
Wow. Okay, so we've really journeyed through Fooled by Randomness today. We've uncovered how deeply chance influences our lives, how our brains are, well, fundamentally wired to misinterpret it.
And how, surprisingly perhaps, ancient wisdom like Stoicism offers some really robust, practical ways to live more effectively, maybe more gracefully, in this uncertain world.
So as you, listening, go about your day, maybe consider this. Where might you be mistaking noise for real signal in your own life, in your job, your investments, even your relationships?
Are you maybe relying too much on past success as some kind of guarantee for the future? Or are you actively thinking about how to build resilience, how to protect yourself from those black swans you know you can't predict?
And maybe the deepest question, how can you cultivate that sense of dignity, that grace in your own actions, regardless of what Lady Fortuna throws your way?
Because ultimately, this isn't just about avoiding financial mistakes, is it? It's about understanding ourselves better, refining our judgment, and finding a more robust, maybe more meaningful way to navigate the whole unpredictable landscape of being human.